I'm originally from Seoul, Korea, but I lived most of my life in Fremont, California.
So I was born in the United States, and immediately after I was born, I moved back to Hong Kong and lived there until I was 6.
I grew up in Mountain View. I grew up in Korea. I grew up in Berkeley. If I want to say where I grew up, I'd have to define growing up, and growing up is wherever I am, because you never stop growing up. You're never grown up until it's done. And it's not done until it's over.
So I was born in Upland, California. That's Southern California. Around an hour east of Los Angeles. And I lived there until maybe 7th grade, I think. I don't remember now. Something like that, doesn't matter.
And when I was 6, I decided that I wanted to continue going to school in the US, and so I moved back and I lived with my aunt and uncle. And it was really weird because I was at the age where things didn't matter too much, and I wasn't never in a crisis about moving back between the US and Hong Kong. I thought of going to school in the US.
I don't know, just a couple miles over to the east and
Hong Kong
to Rancho Cucamonga.
Although it's kind of weird because I also consider Hong Kong to be my home.
Fremont is probably one of the biggest and most boring suburbs.
I didn't make any friends in Rancho because I didn't attend school there.
Although
that was okay. I think
because
by the time I was in high school, I actually enjoyed being isolated from everyone in my school.
To do, but to me, it is home and it is very comfortable.
Yeah, it's kind of nice, for me at least, having people not know where you live.
And I guess it also says a lot about the fact that something on the periphery might seem very boring, but to someone who's lived there, it's
keeping your house
more than just a place of just rows of houses and shitty strip malls, but kind of like a home. And perhaps that's a meaningless attachment, but it's definitely.
I didn't stop growing up in Mountain View, kept on growing in Berkeley. I used to live right across People's Park, which was this dirty square of culture, urine, feces, drugs, and homeless people.
I definitely noticed that in the way I talked about both of these places. I would always say I'm going back to Hong Kong instead of I'm going to Hong Kong. And I think that's really continued up until
I think the first sense of traveling was definitely when I first moved from Korea to the US. Because for probably at least a good few months, the US didn't feel like home. It just felt like a prolonged vacation almost. Because I was in school, because it was the summer.
You would think,
so
but toned
we were
down
living in a place
from
that
what you
seemed
would
like
think.
a motel. And it was like a very heavy sense of being in transit. And I think that's the emotion I feel the most with traveling, is that you're somewhere where you normally don't belong, and that it's a very tenuous and temporary feeling, and it's not like a feeling that, oh, you're home.
I don't know if I would consider either Upland or Rancho Cucamonga home. And I guess moving to Berkeley, I wouldn't exactly call it home either. I don't know.
For a good few years, when I went to go back to visit Korea, it didn't feel like traveling, it felt like I was going home. And I think it was an interesting moment sometime in elementary school where going back to Korea felt like traveling and not going back home. because I guess that's when I truly felt that America was home and that being here wasn't traveling or like having a long break.
College is probably where I did a lot more maturing. I don't think I actually matured until I dropped out of college and realized how much of an idiot I was and how smart people are.
And I think what really made Hong Kong home to me was that was where my family was from, and they didn't really move to the US. At least my mom didn't move to the US until I was 13.
I think
so
it's because I have a
there was
very
really no point in
fond
considering
and
the
very
US
limited childhood memory of it,
home because my family wasn't there.
where I didn't really know the full extent or just didn't really know much about the city. So all I had was a very naive and almost fantasy-like fascination of the place, and it's just like a place where I associate.
When you're young, you always think that your home is a
So I think
place for
of
a place for security, a place where you grow up.
a place imagined memory,
And that certainly
and
was the case for me. I felt secure. I felt like I was
rather than
learning
knowing
things
the
constantly
actual
at home.
city. So
Yes, time did
it's
move very
almost like
slowly, but
this
I
weird
never
sense
felt
of
like
paradise, I guess.
I needed to leave this place as much as some other people would. I never felt like I had to absolutely get away
I
from
think it's more with people. I felt at home with my grandparents who lived in Japan, and I had some pretty awesome childhood memories there. So, I mean, even identifying home with them is more identifying with like an ideal.
I mean, the house I used to live at,
Or
my family
sort of a
members,
utopia, right?
just my
Like,
friends.
there's nothing bad
and
about
just
it.
things like
other than
that.
Maybe mosquito
That,
bites.
I mean, just like a part of a 6-year-old's life, and obviously when you're younger, things change a lot quicker, I think, and things that you thought were real obviously aren't real, and when that perception changes, it definitely feels more foreign, especially when you're not there to.
Yeah, I don't know.
to see
It's
those
interesting. I
changes
don't even know my
that actually
grandparents' names.
happen, because obviously if you're not there,
I don't even know where that place was
change
that they
would happen over
lived.
multiple years gradually would feel
Uh,
like
I don't know really much about my grandparents at all, other than my interactions, which were very
So
few.
home was any place that was not my parents' place. And then I realized I was homeless over the summer of 2013. Home was a 2000 Toyota Sienna. Home was also a 2005 Toyota Camry, but
for a while, because Fremont
it
is so
never
close
felt
to
like a
Berkeley,
real home. I did
I
have
never
authority
really
over that
saw
small
Berkeley
space.
as
It
home.
wasn't my parents'
Fremont was always
house,
home.
but
And going back to Fremont
it
was
wasn't a
going
home.
back home,
either.
and
I
going
guess
back to Berkeley was
I was
going
lying.
back to Berkeley,
Those
because
cars weren't my home, but I do have
I guess
to
I didn't
say,
feel the need
once
to
you've been in a period of
establish Berkeley as a
homelessness,
home because I already had one.
you
where I felt
really
comfortable.
start to
And
understand,
because in a lot of
appreciate
ways,
having
the
a place
people,
that
the
locks, that
culture,
is
the
out of
weather,
sight, that is
everything so
private.
similar to Fremont, it
You
kind
can
of felt like
do
an extension and not like a new place.
almost anything you want.
But once my
at
parents
home.
moved back to Korea,
That's what a home
and
is.
I no longer
And
had
in
a home
the
in
minivan,
Fremont.
and in the sedan, I
It
couldn't
was
do
kind
any
of
that.
for a while. It was very
Yes, I did have some privacy, but
uncomfortable and kind of strange because it felt like I had
there's
no
only so much you can do in such a
and
small space.
it was pretty alienating, and I guess I went through a kind of strange, like, semi-depression, semi-confused state that a lot of people feel when they move to college for the first time, of not really having a place to belong.
I guess not feeling
But and I
very
guess out of necessity,
comfortable
I
in these
developed
environments.
a feel
I-
of Berkeley as a home.
I just didn't like them.
because
I don't
think
like-
everyone needs a home.
I don't like palm trees. They just feel so artificial, at least in Southern California. I don't like those.
Back then, I thought it was home. Now,
lawns
whenever I go
that
back,
people have.
it's always my parents' place. Anytime people tell me, "Oh, where are you going for break or Thanksgiving?" I'm gonna go visit my parents. That's now what I think of my parents' place, which was formerly my home. My home is now in Berkeley. I live in a rent-controlled apartment that it's not the cleanest place in the world. It's not the most glamorous place in the world. It's not the closest to school, but it is certainly my home.
I was kind of an outcast in the family that I lived in with my aunt and uncle and their 2 daughters. Because, well, one, I wasn't part of their family, and English was also something that I had just started learning, so I couldn't really communicate with anyone very well. And in school, I was also bullied for a long time for, how I spoke, because I didn't speak very well.
I think the main factor was
and the
time
way I
in
looked.
both that I just got used to the U.S. and got enough attachments to the place that made it feel like home, and that I forgot enough about Korea and the people that I knew there that it felt more foreign, I guess. Because obviously when you're not living in a certain place, it changes and you don't change with it.
I don't know, maybe I like not having a home or something.
And I'm proud to call it my home because it's somewhere where I can go. I have keys to. My parents don't have keys to this place.
City and
Other people don't have
like
keys
walking
to
through
this
Berkeley
place.
at night sometimes at what is it? When the sun goes down and it's like dark, and then everyone's lights in their houses start turning on, and it's so lovely and warm and get that glowy feeling.
And I was really bullied until college,
I think
and
I'm kind of
now that
actually
I've kind of come to terms with being
apathetic.
Asian America, how I'm in this kind of liminal space, I've
things I don't
come to
It's
accept
hard
it
to
more,
really
and I've come to accept the fact that
connect with.
I haven't really found home, and even though I have
with
places to call home, like physical spaces, I think mentally I'm still in transition.
I mean, I think part of it is
Like my best
if
friend
something is just
dropped out of
different from what
high
you're
school.
used to, what
Actually,
you
one of my best
grew up
friends,
in, the environment,
went to a
the
different high
people,
school.
the culture, the weather.
And then so
And I mean, I think some of that is like
it was,
what you're
I
used
guess, a
to, and I think some of it is
long-distance
just like
relationship, you would call it.
naturally what you
And then
like or
my
what
other
you
best
don't like.
friend dropped out of high school,
And
and then
it's different.
there's
for
another
people.
long-distance
I think some
relationship. My
people
grandparents, long-distance relationship.
accept the
Um,
differences and be okay with it. Some people
And I think,
enjoy the change.
and yeah, a lot of my friends didn't go to the
Actually,
same
I guess
school as I
change
did
to
as well.
enjoy
So
a new environment. Some people never get used to it, and that's why they don't like it, and that's why they're alienated by it. I think for me, obviously the differences moving were language, the culture,
I kind of crave that, but at the same time, I also have a fear of
the
being
people. I mean,
tied down.
everything changed going from a very Korean like environment, living in a big city, to moving to a suburb with a lot of white people and just like a different kind of people that I've never met or even like really understood.
Really bugs me because there's this girl I met, or a lot of people I meet who know what home is for them, and it's with their parents or like a specific location. And I remembered this girl, she was from Greece, and everything she did was about Greece, and she would say, or she didn't say, but something, I forget, what was it? She was like, I must get back to the sea. Like, she identified so much with the sea. I was like, that's so wonderful. Like, so wonderful, but, I guess I don't really have that. Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure about what home is, but because I put them with people, or I associate home with other people, or I did, it was sort of problematic because they left, and that was kind of devastating.
I think as a kid, you're a lot more malleable because you're not fully. I mean, because I think as an adult, you're kind of stiffer in the changes you can make because the things.
But
that
you lose a
see
sense of security, and you come to realize how important having a real place to be is.
Concrete person. But as a kid,
I guess that's
think
a
you're
idea of being in the home,
a lot
where
more
you can be in a car, but a car is used for transportation. A home is where you
as a
can
kid,
stay.
it's just a matter of time.
You can.
And as
You don't
long
have to
as
relax
you're
in a home. You could build up some more stress.
comfortable enough, like as long as you're not in like some crazy amount of stress for whatever reason, I think it's inevitable that you will adapt.
Yeah, but I don't know. I still get that. I still get that achy. You know that achy feeling, the homesick feeling. I still get it sometimes, and it's not for anything in particular, or at least something I can say. This is it. I think for a while I did. It's really embarrassing. It was with a boy. I say I'm Taiwanese American, but I
You know,
don't really
I'm
know what I mean when I
technically
say
Asian
that,
American.
since
I
don't
was
know
born in
shit
the
about
United
Taiwan.
States and raised here
Kinda
most of my
silly,
life.
But it's odd because when I go to Taiwan,
And when I go back to Hong
I
Kong,
identify myself as an
I'm
American.
not quite
because
from
I
Hong
have
Kong.
nothing in
I'm
common with these
American.
people other
And
than,
when I'm in America,
blood ties.
people
But when
identify
I'm in
me
America,
more as someone
I don't
who has
feel
come
like
from
I
Hong
quite
Kong.
fit the, I don't know, description of an American, like a pure American. I don't even know what that is really, but some intuition is just telling me that no, like, you're Taiwanese American. Maybe that was just like ground into me by my parents, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think, because I think culture is. I guess maybe because the people I cared about a lot were always far away from me, and it was easier. It's much easier to miss something, right?
So where I grew up just depends on where I am.
Than actually.
But if you want the generic growing up, or what most people think, I grew up in Mountain View, all the way up until I was 18, at which point I left for Berkeley.
I don't know what home is. I don't know. Even as a kid, before we even moved from Upland, I would always get this feeling of homesickness, and I didn't know where that home was. I mean, I could identify it, or I identified it as a homesick feeling, but I'm not sure why I did.